The open marriage that turned my world upside down. Hi, Reddit. I'm reaching out with a story that's both deeply personal and profoundly transformative. I'm using a throwaway account to maintain some level of privacy, but this is something I need to share. My name is Lisa, and my husband Mark and I have been married for 12 years. Our relationship was always strong. We laughed together, supported each other, and had a deep understanding of one another. But despite all that, something was missing. It all started about a year ago. Our lives had become predictably routine. We were going through the motions, and while we still loved each other deeply, the spark seemed to be fading. We both felt it, but neither of us knew how to address it. It was during one of our late-night conversations that Mark first suggested the idea of an open marriage. At first, I thought he was joking. It felt so out of the blue, like he was suggesting we climb Mount Everest just for fun. But Mark was serious. He explained that he loved me, but he was yearning for new experiences and connections. He wasn't unhappy, but he wanted to explore something that could potentially reignite the passion between us. I was overwhelmed. I had so many questions swirling in my mind. Was this his way of saying he was bored with me? Was he looking for something that I couldn't provide? On the other hand, there was a part of me that was curious. What if this was the answer we needed? After many discussions and a lot of tears, we agreed to give it a try. We set some ground rules to ensure that our marriage remained the top priority: complete honesty, no overnight stays with others, and always coming back to each other. We both created profiles on dating apps, and I was surprised by how nervous and excited I felt. Mark was the first to go on a date. He met a woman named Claire. I was apprehensive, but tried to be supportive. When he came home that night, he was glowing. He talked about how much he enjoyed his time with Claire, how refreshing it was to connect with someone new. It was clear that he was excited, and I tried to be happy for him. I decided to test the waters myself. I went on a date with a man named David. It was nice. Pleasant even, but nothing earth-shattering. I felt a mix of relief and confusion. I was happy to be exploring, but I didn't feel the spark I had hoped for. As weeks went by, I found myself more focused on how Mark was doing. His stories about Claire became more frequent and more detailed. Then, something unexpected happened. Mark started spending more time with Claire. At first, it was just a few extra hours here and there, but soon it turned into entire days. I noticed that our evenings together were becoming less frequent, and when we were together, Mark seemed distant, preoccupied. I began to feel a pang of jealousy that I hadn't anticipated. It was a feeling that gnawed at me, making me question whether I had made the right decision. I tried to talk to Mark about it, but he brushed it off, saying that it was just a phase and that our marriage was still solid. One night, Mark came home late, and when he did, he was unusually quiet. He said he had been out with Claire and that it had been a long day. I tried to be understanding, but when he went to bed, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. I went through his things and found a series of messages between him and Claire. Messages that were not just flirtatious, but deeply emotional. They talked about plans for the future, about feelings that went beyond just physical attraction. I felt my world crumble. I confronted Mark, and he admitted that he had developed strong feelings for Claire. He said he still loved me but couldn't ignore the emotions he was experiencing. I was devastated. It felt like a betrayal on a level I hadn't prepared for. I couldn't believe that the very thing we had agreed upon to strengthen our marriage had become a threat to it. We decided to take a break. It was painful and confusing. I moved in with my sister while Mark stayed in our house. Those weeks were some of the hardest of my life. I was filled with a mix of anger, sadness, and self-doubt. Was I not enough? Had our love not been strong enough to withstand this? The questions tormented me, and I spent hours replaying every conversation, every decision we had made. During our break, Mark and I had minimal contact. I tried to focus on myself, seeking support from friends and therapy. I started to regain a sense of clarity, but the pain of betrayal never fully left. I wondered if I would ever be able to trust Mark again, or if the damage was too profound. Then, out of the blue, Mark showed up at my sister's house. He looked worn out and emotional, with a look in his eyes that was both desperate and hopeful. He told me that he had ended things with Claire. He said that after spending time alone, he realized that he had made a huge mistake. The feelings he had for Claire were strong, but they didn't compare to what he had with me. He wanted to rebuild our relationship, to make things right. I was torn. Part of me wanted to take him back immediately, to forgive him and try to move on. Another part of me was still so hurt and confused, struggling to reconcile the man who had betrayed me with the one who was now begging for another chance. We decided to start seeing a therapist together, hoping that professional guidance would help us navigate this complex situation. It was a slow and painful process, but we began to rebuild our relationship one step at a time. We reconnected on a deeper level, addressing the issues that had led us to explore an open marriage in the first place. Some days were better than others. We had moments of genuine connection, where it felt like we were rediscovering each other. Other days, the scars of our past choices felt raw and exposed. It was a roller coaster of emotions, grief, anger, and hope. I learned that an open marriage wasn't a cure-all for our issues. It was an experiment that tested the very foundation of our relationship. While it brought some clarity, it also revealed vulnerabilities and unresolved issues that we needed to confront. Months later, Mark and I are still together, working on our marriage and trying to find a new equilibrium. The experience has taught us both valuable lessons about communication, trust, and the complexities of love. We don't have all the answers, and our journey is far from over, but we're committed to working through it together. To anyone considering an open marriage, know that it's not a simple solution. It requires deep honesty, strong communication, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. It's not for everyone, and it certainly wasn't the answer to all our problems. But it was a journey that brought us face to face with the strengths and weaknesses of our relationship. So here we are, still navigating the aftermath of our choices, still loving each other and still learning. Life has a way of throwing curveballs, and sometimes the answers we seek are not what we expect. But through it all, I've learned that love, in its truest form, is about facing those challenges together and finding a way through them, no matter how difficult.